first is we're going to have a pitch from Victoria Colangelo with the Mitigation Banking Group. And Victoria, actually, her company is a sponsor of this InvestConnect. And Victoria has participated many years. So I think she will set the standard for us a little bit here. So Victoria, I'm going to hand over the mic.
Okay.
Oh, one more thing. No questions after the pitches. All right, you can connect with people afterwards.
Where's my presentation?
Your presentation is going to be right up, right?
There we go.
There you go.
Great, thank you. Am I not going to use this?
I'm going to go like this. Oh, that's right, you're not.
Hi, everyone. Victoria Colangelo from Florida. Welcome. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about mitigation banking in Florida. And then also I have a great opportunity for some mitigation banks in Florida, but also in Georgia. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and see if anyone's interested in investing. So a little bit about me. I've been in this industry since 2004. I started as an intern when I was 21. It's been 19 years. I just turned 40. And so mitigation banking is all I know. And I worked my way up from an intern to marketing director to vice president to president. And then 7 years ago, I started my own company. And it's been a wonderful blessing. And I represent about 25 different mitigation banks for credit sales throughout the state of Florida. And then most recently, about 5 years ago or so, I started seeing that mitigation bankers actually wanted to sell, which my first 10 years or so, I would have told you you're nuts, because once you have this asset, you don't want to let it go. But every single mitigation bank landowner is different. And in Florida and in other states, but mostly in Florida, it's a lot of mom and pop. And some of these pops are getting older. They've been in the industry for 20 or 30 years. They're in their 80s. Their families aren't interested in the business of banking. They don't understand it. And so they want to let go of the assets so that they can plan ahead for their future and their family. So that's the case with the Yazoo Mitigation Bank. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Let's see here. I want to show you some mitigation bank success stories that we've sold in the past. How do I do this? I just go like this? Perfect. All right, so Crooked River Mitigation Bank, this was a phenomenal sale, and it was a win-win for both the buyer and the seller. It's a smaller bank, it's 323 acres, and this sold about 2 or 3 years ago, and they're pretty much sold out. DOT needed all their credits. Great story for all parties. Neo Verde Mitigation Bank, this was interesting because it's the first and only mitigation bank in the area, so it's hard to figure out absorption and credit pricing. But we really lucked out because this is on the Space Coast of Florida, and SpaceX and Blue Origin have been fighting for the credit since day one. And so this project has, the investment was definitely worth the buyers, and it's been a wonderful success story, and I sell the credits for this bank as well. And then most recently, Colbert Cameron Mitigation Bank, same story, older landowner, been in the family forever, but the kids aren't interested in the business, so he's going to sell the asset. And this one sold, and actually a pharmaceutical sales company, he's actually the president of the pharmaceutical sales company, and he bought the land. And he mainly bought it for hunting recreation, and he said the credits were just, an extra bonus. So this was a great opportunity as well. Okay, so here are some mitigation banks that are for sale in Florida only. We have the Basin 22 Mitigation Bank, which is over here in the Vero area in Orange. And this one's really a wonderful opportunity because it has a mitigation bank, which is the only mitigation bank in that vicinity, but also it has entitled land for development. So if you're interested, you could buy both or just the bank. And this one has been put out to bid, and they're currently looking at offers, but I am aware that they will accept some more. So if you're interested in that, let me know. That's a great opportunity. Florida Gulf Coast Mitigation Bank. This one has a phenomenal service area, as you can see in green. It's saltwater and freshwater. Credits, sell for about $200,000 to $500,000 a credit. It's really the only game in town. Credit sales are kind of slow, but the Suncoast Parkway is going through, and supposedly they're going to need all the credits, more than what we can provide. And so that's a phenomenal area that's up and coming. Fox Branch Mitigation Bank, this is a smaller bank over in the Hillsborough River County, or Hillsborough River Basin, the drainage basin, the watershed, and it has about 4 or 5 different competitors, and this one's for sale as well. Garcon Peninsula Mitigation Bank, a very small bank in Santa Rosa County. He's been in the industry for 30 years. He's looking to unload and let that go. Ocklawaha Mitigation Bank, this is a new mitigation bank in the southern Ocklawaha Basin, which is kind of the Claremont area. Huge demand right now, and so he's trying to sell it. This is a small bank, probably has 20 credits available, state only. RG Reserve Mitigation Bank, this was an interesting one. So it got permitted back in 2007, 2008, but then it went belly up and no one really did anything with it. So they brought it back alive and they're looking for an investor to, start this thing back up. And then the Yazoo Mitigation Bank, which is the featured mitigation bank today. This is in Meriwether County, Georgia. It has 52 wetland and 74,912 stream credits. And the cool thing about this project is kind of like RG Reserve, that it started back in 2006, got the first credits, sold the first credits, but never did the construction. And the funds were never put in place. So there's about $2 million that's needed to put this bank back in compliance. It was suspended because they did not do construction. And so this bank is about $3.1 million to purchase with another $2 million in expenses, and it has $18 million in potential revenue, and per my pro forma with the analysis, with absorption, it will probably take about 15 years to sell because we do have a lot of stream credits. But as you can see, everything that I had just stated regarding the money, the hydrological unit codes are right here. And as you can see, this was just suspended of September of last year. And the owners and I have been talking since last summer, and they kind of were like, we want to stay, we want to keep it, we don't. And so now they've told me that they're saying a prayer this week to find an investor. And they would like to keep the land, which is very interesting because sometimes investors want the land and sometimes they don't. So this would definitely be one of those opportunities where the land is not included. You would just be purchasing the MBI, the Yazoo Mitigation Bank. And then I wanted to just give a brief overview on Florida. The new WOTUS rule, as you all know, this has all been in flux since the Rapanos case back in the 80s. And I don't believe we've gotten any further than where we were back then. And so it's back and forth, and the environmental consultants are frustrated. They don't know if they should buy federal mitigation, and if they should, how many. It's in flux. The EPA and the DEP of Florida are in legal challenges. So there's a lot of uncertainty on which wetlands are classified as federal. And so we're working through that, and I hope to have some kind of answer just so people know what to do, because there's a lot of uncertainty with that. Multi-purpose mitigation banks, you may have heard this throughout the conference, or you will. Supposedly Jacksonville hasn't been doing it correctly. And so the current mitigation banks will be grandfathered in. But moving forward, if a mitigation bank is permitted as a multi-purpose mitigation bank, not only will it create language for further emerging markets like nutrient trading or carbon or whatever it might be, but what it will really do that's going to affect the mitigation banking industry, for better or worse, I'm not sure yet, is if you need a state-only credit, you can't just deduct it from the state ledger. I got to now deduct it from both. It's almost like we're double dipping, and I never thought that. But the Jacksonville district has been made aware that the rest of the nation is not doing it this way, and so we might need to conform to some new standards, which has created a little influx in the industry, but we'll see how that goes. And then state assumption of the 404 program. This has been rather interesting. About 2-3 years ago or so, the DEP assumed responsibility for the Corps of Engineers for 404 permits. And at first, it was a great idea. We thought DEP could, handle it. But then, amazing boom happened, and instead of 500 applications, they now have 1,500 to process. So there's been a delay in that, a lot of staff turnover, a lot of training for the newbies to understand how to implement that. And so if you do need a state and federal permit, you might get it from DEP. There might be the same reviewer, or you might need both, and this is on the applicant side. Now, mitigation banks are still permitted by the Corps. They do not go to DEP. But on the impact side, we do negotiate and take care of the DEP rather than the Corps now. Section 7, Section 10, sometimes they do go to the Corps. And unpredictable time frame of permitting a mitigation bank. So if anyone ever asked me how long does it take to permit a mitigation bank, I would say 2 to 7 years. However, an analysis by the Army Corps of Engineers just came out 2 months ago, and they have admitted the average time is 5 years. And so when you ask them why, they really put it back on the applicant, response time. But the majority of the time, they have admitted that it's really a staff problem. And as you heard in the keynote speaker, there's going to be lots of money that's going to be infiltrated, hopefully to add staff, so that these permits, these restoration, ecological permits, can be fast-tracked and put into place sooner than 5 years. And I know some mitigation banks that have been permitted for 5 years and still aren't permitted. So it's a lengthy process, and that is why purchasing an already permitted mitigation bank is less risky, because it's a sure thing. Sometimes when you permit a bank, you may not know until the last day that they're only going to give you 30 credits and you budgeted for 100. And so now the whole deal's dead. So this really gives you assurances with the risk, the time, we all know time is money, especially 5 years later, and get you into selling credits tomorrow versus 5 years from today. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Strong market, public-private mitigation credit demand. Here is my contact information. That's my cell phone. There's my email. And just let me know if you have any questions or anything you want to talk about. I'm an open book. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.